Hi there, aspects of alchemy. First of all, I must say to you that I'm not an alchemist, and this is just information that I've gleaned from various sources, including and especially Stefan Heuler, who, of course, is a Jungian um, alchemist, and Jung took alchemy to a whole different new level of understanding and of subtlety and of sophistication. But I certainly like to become an alchemist. It's a matter of finding the right medium for it. Um, but alchem means of the black land. And the fact is that some people say if you want to become an alchemist, it's very easy. You simply go into the art of composting, because a garden compost takes recently cut green foliage, and after some time turns it into literally a powdery black, mulchy soil, packed full of goodness and nutrients for plants, and which, if you dig into the soil or you dig into the roots of a tree, you can rescue many a crop or a tree from oblivion. And there's also other ways of composting, such as you take a great big barrel, fill it with water, and you fill it with green leaves, especially borage and sorrel, and you get this black liquid come out of the bottom after a while, sort of partially fermented, and you can spray that directly onto leaves of plants and trees, and to get spectacular results and to improve the fertility of your garden. And it's a whole process, and it requires a few secret ingredients as well, which you can get from the Henry Doubleday Organic Soil Association. It's called a compost heap starter, and it's like a white powder, and you put that in the centre of the compost. And there are various stages, what they call Canadian boxes, where you put the compost in from one box to the other in various stages of decomposition. And some truly extraordinary magic happens, or alchemy. So literally, you get black soil. So perhaps composting is an early form of alchemy, and it's certainly a cheap form of alchemy as well, if you want to do it, and very good for your garden. So that's alchem, the actual word alchemy explained a little bit. But the main thing is to take it to the Jungian level of understanding. I did got another video talking about synchronicity, when I sort of presented some of Stefan Heuler's observations about synchronicity. And I said that synchronicity, receptivity to synchronicity, that is becoming psychologically receptive to synchronistic events, is pretty spontaneous, and synchronistic events are incredibly rare on this dimension, in the worlds of the demiurge. And but some people have said that you can create, in quotation marks, artificial conditions whereby you can increase the probability of synchronistic events, or you can increase the sensitivity that you have, or the receptivity you have to the possibility of there being a synchronistic event. And tarot and divination is also part of this general category of synchronicity. And with regard to creating artificial conditions whereby synchronicity is likely to occur. And alchemy certainly falls into this category as well. So you could define alchemy as a system whereby synchronistic events are more likely to occur than in the wild, for example. And we'll come back to what the implication of this is in a minute. So I've come here, that's kind of the 11th aspect. And these are the sort of aspects of alchemy that are kind of brainstorms, as it were. And it sure requires a lot of patience to be an alchemist, which I think in itself, in cultural terms, is quite interesting, because nowadays everything is instant. instant coffee, instant learning, instant piano mastery, everything. People want to get results instantly. Well, alchemy is a very it's very opposite of this. It's very, very slow. Everything takes years and years to happen. And it is a true craft, as it were. Like it takes years to become a pianist or a guitarist because you have to practice, little and often every day, and it takes many years for you to get results. And there is no, you learn the craft of piano playing or guitar playing, or any orchestration or melodic composition. But anything like you making chairs, woodwork, metalwork, it's a craft. It takes a long time. And it used to be in the old days that everything took longer, and people's expectations were much less than they are now. People expect results very, very quickly. But they're disappointed to find the results are pretty sloppy, because it does take a long time to become crafty, which is full of craft. And of course, then we think of the craft, which is Freemasonry, which is a symbolic representation of the fact that you have to become skilled and experienced and knowledgeable about things instead of going off half-cocked, which is what people do nowadays in a desperate attempt to be somebody or to be something. So patience is required of alchemy. That's certainly true. If we look here, go in no particular order really. It's a very mysterious process, a mysterious interialization of matter. It's almost like you're looking into matter, and you're seeing something very mysterious occur over time. So there's a kind of an attraction there. The mystery of it all is very beautiful, very attractive, and very it changes your mind. And we'll come on to that in a minute. Non-judgmental perception of the unfamiliar. Yes, in alchemy, you'll see a great deal of technical details and strange nomenclature and symbology, unfamiliar, perhaps a little bit unnerving at times, and the symbols are sometimes quite fierce and quite, quite quite disturbing sometimes. Black dragons and things like that, and you've become very non-judgmental. You have to remember that these things are happening on a different level. So you're not really going to see dragons. Even if you did, they're not going to do you any harm, because this is all in your own mind, and you have control over your own mind. So these things that look unfamiliar and kind of scary is only because you don't understand them. And so you have to take a sort of leap of faith, a kind of non-judgmental attitude towards things that are kind of weird and wonderful, which to some people is half their attraction, but we'll come on to that in a bit as well. So coming down, a deep attunement to objects or symbols. That is true. If you work with anything, you work with wood or metal or paint or sound, you are going to reach a level of attunement to the medium through which you are working. You become very intimate with the medium. You become intimate with the woods, the different types of wood, and how they respond to metal chisels and blocks and the saws and stuff like that. For example, you work with different stone. I mean, stone is not all the same. There's different stone that responds differently. Some of it are softer, harder, grainier. Stonemasonry is incredibly intense, and you become more and more attuned to both your tools and what your tools are working on. And that's a natural, beautiful process, really, as a result of the cultivation of craft. The abandonment of causal reductionism. Yes, this follows on again a brilliant lecture by Stefan Heuler on synchronicity and alchemy, which is really, really worth checking out. And you get also the kind of heads up on what alchemy is and alchemical principles. We live in a causal universe, and we perceive causality everywhere. But when you become an alchemist, you have to literally abandon all ideas of causality. So, what happens in the alchemical laboratory and what happens within you as the alchemist, they are totally independent of each other in terms of causality. And yet, certain synchronistic events happen in the laboratory and within you, or perhaps even within others that are observing the operations of alchemy, that have a huge meaning for the observer, and life-changing effects on the observer or observers. And but you have to abandon causality. You are not causing anything to happen, and nothing is causing anything to happen within you apart from the fact that you're perceiving a meaningful event which happens synchronistically with a change that happens within you. So we'll park that way. That's a brief thing. This is interesting. Exposure to the possibility of transformational change. Again, Stefan Euler he identifies different forms of change, such as cyclical change, seasonal change, and evolutionary change. To which I'd also add there's such a thing as transmissioned change as well. When change is transmitted across a certain plane or medium. But there's also transformational change, and you have to become, you're exposed to the idea of transformation within yourself, which is synchronistically linked to transformation within the chemicals or substances that you're observing that are going to eventually change over time. And that's a beautiful exposure. It's something which is profound and life-changing for obvious reasons. I think down here there's a romantic anthropomorphism as well, because for operations of alchemical nature to work, a certain degree of projection occurs, and you sort of get friendly with the substances, and it seems to you that the substances in the alchemical retort in the laboratory have an intelligence of their own, which they do, and you become friendly, intimate with them, even though they're taking a long time to manifest or a long time to reveal meaning to you. Whilst you're waiting for that to happen, that mysterious connection, mysterious synchronistic event to happen, you are becoming intimate with the substances that you are putting into the retort, that you are sort of uniting, as it were, within the laboratory itself, within the various operations of alchemy. And the whole process of alchemy becomes a sort of intelligence, becomes a sort of friend, that you befriend, literally, the alchemical processes that you initiate. So that's a kind of romantic, some might say romantic idea, but I think it's a very powerful psychological aspect to alchemy. There's also an initiatory factor, initiatory, should be a Y on the end there, comes where you're beginning something, you're initiating yourself, you're beginning change within yourself, and you're beginning change within the universe. And two events will happen synchronistically that will be life-changing, which you have initiated by bringing certain substances together in one sort of retort, or one test tube, or one condition. Normally these substances are brought together in one sort of in a vessel, some kind of vessel to which heat is applied. Just the same as in compost, you're bringing together foliage, and the heat is generated internally by the compost heap, which causes very complex chemical reactions to occur. And again, you sort of become intimate, fascinated with the mysterious power of composting. And even some people even say that the compost heap begins to acquire a certain sort of non-localized intelligence or sort of beingness, which is linked to your own. So, alchemy is an important part of initiation. You begin something and you see it all the way through to the end, hopefully. Um, another aspect is that the material, yes, can affect the spiritual. So this is a very important part of alchemy. It's when matter and spirit come together. They're united in a unique way, and sometimes a very kind of dramatic way, and sometimes a very, very sort of fast way. An instantaneous connection is made, whereby matter is spiritualized and spirit is sort of becomes immanent with matter or enters into matter. And of course, one thinks of the Eucharist, of course, the Catholic Eucharist and the Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox Eucharist, where the Holy Spirit imbues matter with spirituality and with meaning. And that meaning is transmitted to the celebrants of the Eucharist. And not all the time, but sometimes it can be synchronistic with profound changes in the religious, moral, or ascetic life of the celebrant and of the priest who's administering the Eucharist. So that's very important. And then the final aspect is what I call the Neil Armstrong aspect, which is just the effect that seeing things from a different point of view, a profoundly different point of view. And Neil Armstrong, when they say when Neil Armstrong looked down on the planet Earth, he was fully aware that he would see the planet Earth from outer space as a fact. But when he actually experienced this phenomenon, the whole phenomenon of the planet Earth seen from outer space, he had an epiphany. It changed his entire life, so it is claimed. And I can vouch for that. Things happen to you that change your life, that change your perception. I remember when I first saw a very simple experiment in physics where you sprinkle iron filings on a piece of paper, and then you bring a very strong natural magnet underneath, and then you just tap the paper lightly, and all the little iron filings line up north to south, and you can actually see the lines of magnetic force. That the filings sort of trace out on this bit of paper. And they trace out the magnetic force that is emanating from the magnet underneath, the very strong magnet. And it's a wonder to behold. I mean, it's just extraordinary. And it makes you see the world in a different light. You begin to think, what is there extra to life than I'm perceiving? I'm not seeing all these magnetic forces around things, and suddenly I am, and it has a huge sort of meaningful. It's a meaningful experience which happens to you, and so alchemy has that too. When things happen in alchemy, which eventually they do, if you're lucky, all other things being equal, then then you have this called Neil Armstrong moment where something happens which causes you to have an epiphany. You have an epiphany, and at the very same time, something happens which confirms that epiphany, as it were, as well, which is something we've discussed before with regard to synchronicity. And certainly, so the idea basically is that things take a very, very long time to happen in alchemy. But the idea is that you put various substances together in an alchemical retort, and you apply a very, very gentle heat or sometimes sunlight over a very, very long time. Actually, years, could be even decades. And then one day, you go into the laboratory and immediately you enter the laboratory, something happens to you. You have an epiphany, but you feel different, but you don't know what that feeling means exactly. And then you see something happen in the retort, which either reinforces this feeling or confirms to you what you already knew about that feeling, but you didn't really know how to express it in words to yourself, or gives you some kind of extra information or insight into what it is that you're experiencing in way of epiphany. And again, you see the world in a completely different way as a result of your epiphany and what happens in the alchemical retort uh, instantaneously. And at that moment, it's like everything kind of slows down, and you become the center of a mandala, huge mandala, and you see beyond matter. Even though you are looking at matter, you're looking at the substances in the alchemical retort, but you're seeing them in a different way, and they kind of jump into your soul, as it were, to put it poetically. What happens in the laboratory jumps into your soul, but of course it's already there. It's just that you're seeing what's happened within you in a different, well, in a more meaningful light, in an interpretive light, as it were. And so it takes you sort of, because you can have an epiphany at any time for any reason. But in the alchemical laboratory, I suppose something happens, which I suppose you do have a moment of causality, because you think that what's happened in the laboratory has affected you in some way, but it hasn't actually. It just, maybe it feels like that, but it hasn't. But that's just the way you're interpreting. You're projecting meaning onto a miraculous event. Until it doesn't, the miraculous event is neither here nor there. Jesus did miracles, but it's not what the miracles are. It's what they mean, and it's what they teach you, and it's the extra information they give you about yourself and about other people and about the nature of matter and the cosmos itself. That's what's important about what happens in alchemy, and in the miraculous generally, in spiritual healing, and even in changes are transmitted radionically or homeopathically or whatever. It's what these things mean. It's not sort of what they do exactly. Now, why do they take a very long time? I'll go into this very, very briefly, because of course, when you first become an alchemist, and you first put all these substances together, unite them in one condition or one place, you're full of expectation. In fact, technically, what they call lust of result, which means that you're grasping onto things that could happen, and you're waiting for things to happen. And believe it or not, that expectation, that graspingness, to put it in Buddhist terms, is actually preventing everything from happening. It's actually the biggest source of resistance, but not the only source. The other source is, of course, the demiurge and his agents, who don't want you to see the door opening. He doesn't want you to see matter becoming spiritualized. He doesn't want you to gain insight into yourself or into the cosmos, in case it affects his agenda. And of course, his agenda is to feed off a negative psychic energy that you generate. So if he doesn't mind what you do or what you believe or where you go, so long as you don't affect that agenda. But when you start affecting it, then there is resistance. So, and of course, alchemical forces don't use force, so they won't, kick down that door which the demiurge has shut. They'll wait for the agent of the demiurges to go off, do something else, and then they'll quietly open that door to reveal the meaningful universe to you. And so this may take decades, okay, because 70% of it is your own expectations, and until they've gone, nothing can happen, and until the guardians the demiurge's agents who are stopping you from having a synchronistic experience in an alchemical context. As soon as they've gone, then the thing can happen. So this may take many, many years. And it also, in that time, you're also becoming more intimate with your laboratory, intimate with with our chemical processes itself. So you'll sort of you're like you're a reflection basically of what is going on in the alchemical laboratory. You'll sort of have an inner laboratory, and the inner laboratory and the outer laboratory they have to sort of come together. And that's going to take a long time, believe me. It cannot be hurried. And if you get results straight away, this is a bad thing, actually, because it shows you have too much of an active imagination, and also that you desire chemical power. And our chemistry has been much abused, as you can imagine. It's been turned into contrix. It's been turned into psychicism. Schizophrenics have got hold of it. Various dubious people have got hold of it, including people that work for the demiurge, who are into kind of glamour, magic, and delusional thinking generally, and also deluding other people. So alchemistry, which is called the art, de ars, is so open to abuse that unfortunately it has to be kept pretty secret, really. And even though, a lot of our chemical principles and processes are in plain sight, you can find them anywhere on the internet, the actual doing of our chemistry is incredibly secret, personal and individual. And it's best that you keep your laboratory, the location of it, secret, and you don't go around shouting it from the rooftops, and telling people all and sundry, because you will get any old, And I don't mean to be elitist about this. It's not being elitist. It's simply that, when you've got a system which is so open to abuse, as Chaucer shows you, for example, the alchemist in Chaucer's Tales of Canterbury. You've got to be very careful who you tell and who you kind of sort of let into the secret. So a lot of it's what they call sub rosa, which is under the rose, which is sort of private, individual, not secret exactly, because you're not doing anything wrong or evil, but it has to be sort of a private thing. And to gain admittance to the alchemical orders, you have to prove your worth. You have to prove that that you are a craftsman, that you're prepared to be a craftsman and to wait years and to become intimate with your medium and your tools, and not to go half-cocked into anything, but to take your time and to become perfect or perfect your craft, as it were. Because alchemy is a craft. It's the craft of seeing changes which other people cannot see, and it's all based on observation, very, 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 very intimate, acute observation. So we're not using Geiger counters or other detection equipment. You're using your own senses, and your own senses have to be crafted to observe the changes that will happen eventually. Although, of course, at the same time, changes will happen when you least expect it. And yet when they happen, because of your training, because of your skill in observation, you will detect these changes when other people will say, I can't see anything. I'm looking at this test tube and I can't see anything that's changed. It's been like that for the last 20 years, mate. What are you talking about? But you, in an instant, can see something that nobody else can see. And of course, it is personal and individual to you. Every alchemist's journey is a personal one. It's not like Harry Potter where well, even in Harry Potter, the Muggles don't see things. They don't see things right under their noses, which is as it should be. Because if people, it would terrify most people. If they really saw the magical universe stripped away saw reality as it actually is. Most people would go completely potty with it all and think they're being possessed by demons and go around burning people and God knows what, like, literally God knows what. These are just some sort of principles of alchemy to encourage you to seek out alchemists and become apprenticed to alchemists. It's good to become an apprentice. Same as Freemasonry, you become an apprentice, then you become a journeyman, and then you become a master. And it takes many, many years to become a journeyman because you have to journey, follow the spiritual path of alchemy to the very end before you can become a master. And when you do become a master, it's both. It happens very, very gradually, but then at some point it happens instantly, and it's that day, that hour, that second that everything changes in your life. Everything changes. Everything changes in the alchemical retort. Everything changes within you. The Neil Armstrong moment, as it were. You could say that when Neil Armstrong looked down on the planet Earth, he had a moment of alchemy. He had an alchemical moment, as it were. Something just snapped inside him, and he wasn't expecting it because he was a scientist, an astronaut. He dealt with facts, not fairies. But suddenly, as Nietzsche said, facts are value. Suddenly, he was presented with the image of the planet Earth not as a fact, not even as a real thing, but something which extended far beyond the fact of this little planet bobbing around in space. Because you can know everything, a lot of facts, but you sometimes, when the wonder hits you, when the mysterious power of seeing something completely different for the first time. It's like when people go caving, and they find this cave where nobody has ever been since the inception of the universe itself, since the Earth was born. It does something to you. That's why people love caving. That's why people love to do that, because you're going down into the bowels of the earth and you're seeing something which nobody has ever seen before. Beautiful crystals, stalagmites or stalactites, whatever, or underground streams that fall down into the center of the earth. I mean, people. That's why people do it. It's a very dangerous sport, but that's why people do it. So there's alchemical processes going on within you right now. But when you set them up in a laboratory using glass retorts and Bunsen burners and condensers and distilling equipment, things will happen that will amaze you. That will be like compost heap making, or seeing the planet Earth from space, or going underground, or seeing a cavern. Life changing experiences, and they can happen, but they do take a long time to happen. So you have to learn a lot of patience, which culturally nowadays we just haven't got. So if you learn nothing else by becoming an alchemist, if you learn patience and go against the norms, values, and beliefs of present-day society, which is all based on impatience, then that would be a fantastic initiation for a start. That would be a great thing to learn, patience. Even if you never have an alchemical result ever, just to be waiting for one will do you a lot of psychological good. So that's my little brief saunter through the aspects of alchemy.